Good morning and welcome to Trading Hour. We're coming to you live from the CNBC TV 18 Motilal Oswal studio. I am Reema Tendulkar and with me is Vivek Iyer. And finally, it's a Friday.
It's a Friday.
And it's a good week for our markets. Even today, markets are holding resilient, building on the strength from yesterday. Yesterday was also a quietish session, but we're consolidating with a positive bias. The Nifty is now inching towards 22,600. We crossed that on an intraday basis. 22,625 was the intraday high. And as we speak, we're just trading shy of that mark, up 0.2% on the benchmark indices. For the week, the Nifty is up close to about 2%, while the mid-cap index has gained nearly 3.5%, small-cap index even more. Advanced decline ratio firmly in favor of the stocks advancing, so that's a positive, 4:1 in terms of a ratio for advanced decline ratio. Reliance Industries has come to the party this week, 3% up for the day. For the last 2 days, Reliance Industries has been gaining ground, and that's offsetting. It's acting as a bit of a counterweight to the decline seen in IT. The Nifty IT index is down nearly 1%. Infosys, Tech Mahindra, HCL Tech, all in the red with cuts ranging between 1 to 2%. Defense, PSUs, metals, these have been the pockets, the leadership pockets. They've come back to the party. The defense index, Nifty India Defense Index, is up more than 10%. BEL has been a big winner, 2% higher today, 13% for the week. But, other than that, even the metal names, other oil and gas names are higher. Oil marketing companies today, of course, have taken
cooled off a little bit after yesterday's
cooled off
sharp.
a little bit, yeah.
Right. Good morning, Reema. First up, what we have to keep an eye out for is the entire metal pack. Like you mentioned, the cooling off of the dollar index, a couple of reports indicating that steel prices have remained quite strong in the month gone by. And on the back of that, the entire metal pack, especially if you look at the last 1 week, they are the ones that have actually outperformed quite significantly. Even when you look at some of the individual metal stocks, even today, have a look at Hindustan Copper, NMDC, Nalco, all of these names continue to trade with gains. And in fact, in this particular week, these are some of the stocks that have outperformed quite significantly. Now, looking at the other set of stocks, very individual names, stock-specific and news-specific. First up is Kalpataru Projects. Order win quite strong for this particular name. That stock, YTD order inflow very strong. That stock's doing quite well. Defense, the entire pack has seen quite a bit of a recovery from the recent lows. And BL today getting an order win. Hopes of further order wins after the Defense Expo that happened recently. The entire defense pack too is building onto its gain. The shipbuilder GRSE up over 6.5%. One of the top gainers on the NSE 500. And the other set of stocks are largely doing well. FMCG, select names FMCG. Look at names like Nestle, etc. These are some of the stocks today that are going ahead and hitting the day's highest point, Remo.
Okay, let's get you some opinion, important macro opinion coming in from Chris Wood of Jefferies, who says that Asia-Pacific ex-Japan relative return portfolio, greed and fear, will increase the weighting in China by 2 percentage points to adjust for the recent outperformance. He says this will be paid for by reducing the weight in India and Korea by 1 percentage point each. So China up, India, Korea down. He adds that greed and fear will make further changes in various portfolios. He says the weighting in Alibaba, BYD, Tencent, in the Asia ex-Japan long-only portfolio will be increased by 1 percentage point each, with the investments paid for by removing the investments in Indian industrial name Siemens. So those are some of the changes. But let's talk about the big winner over the last 2 days. Lots of brokerages turning bullish on Reliance Industries. Macquarie is the latest. Sudarshan with the details.
Last 2 days, we have seen three positive brokerage notes coming in for Reliance Industry. Yesterday, we saw Kotak Institutional Equities upgrading the stock to buy with a target price of 1,400. Even Jefferies has maintained buy call and their target price was 1,600. Today, Macquarie has come out with a note. It has upgraded the stock to outperform, and for Macquarie, target price is 1,500, upside of almost 20% from current levels. So what does Macquarie say? It says it has upgraded the stock because it expects few incremental positives over next 6 to 12 months, and talking about FY 25-27.
Sorry to interrupt, but the SEBI's latest chairman, the new chairman, Tuhin Kanta Pandey, is now giving his keynote address at the Money Control event. Let's cut across.
As we face global headwinds in terms of geo-economic fragmentation, tariff issues, and elevated uncertainties, we need to build upon our resilience and strength to sustain our growth. A high level of sustained growth, low current account deficit, low external public debt, healthy bank balance sheets, fiscal consolidation roadmap, continuing government push on government capex and infrastructure, and forex reserve buffer are some key pillars of support for India's resilience against exogenous shocks. As per IMF estimates, overall economic growth in emerging markets and developing economies is projected at 4.2% in 2025, while India is estimated to grow at 6.5% in FY 24-25, indicating a strong growth outlook for the country among the peers. Indeed, many forecasts envisage that India will have a sustained growth of 6.5% over at least till the end of the decade, although we would like to accelerate it much faster in order to achieve the Viksit Bharat goal. In her budget speech on 1st of February 2025, Honorable Finance Minister has outlined government's vision, strategy and action plan, focusing on 4 engines: agriculture, MSME, investment and exports. She also underlined major reforms in 6 domains: taxation, power sector, urban development, mining, financial sector, and regulatory reforms. Let me just now come to the role of the security markets in economic growth. We are all aware, over the years, Indian securities market has played a crucial role in channelizing savings into the productive investments, thereby fueling economic growth. Indeed, raising the savings and investment ratio has been one of the very important goals in the economic planning that we have. It's always provided a platform for businesses to raise capital efficiently through equity and debt markets, reducing pressure on traditional banking channels. And it has facilitated corporate expansion, promoted entrepreneurship, and contributed to overall economic development in the country. And let's see some data points. As of March 2020, there were 49 million unique investors in the SEBI ecosystem, which is now 136 million. Investors in mutual funds have risen 2.4 times in 5 years to 53 million from 22 million. Inflows into risk-oriented mutual funds during current year, which is April-March till January, are of the order of 5.3 trillion rupees. Over the last 10 years, Indian companies have raised on an average 2.2 trillion rupees per year through equity issuance in the securities market. The current fiscal year so far, April-Jan, has seen a record equity issuance of 4 trillion rupees, twice the capital raising of 2 trillion rupees witnessed in the entire previous year, FY 23-24. These are some of the key points. I think there are many. This access to funding through the capital market drives expansion, enhances productivity, fosters innovation, all of which contributed to economic growth. We need long-term capital through both equity and debt issuances as a source of stable funding, fostering sustainable economic growth. And new products like REITs, InvITs, and municipal bonds have huge potential to boost infrastructure development in the country. These products not only provide a diversified source of funding, but also reduce reliance on traditional sources of capital. Let me just come to some of the roles that SEBI is playing. Of course, in case of regulations, SEBI has provided the regulatory structure for REITs, InvITs, and municipal bonds. Some of the new innovations. Over the years, SEBI has taken measures to promote developments of securities market, which is actually as one of our mandates. Reduce risk in the system through effective regulation and protect the interest of the investors, and underline protecting the interest of the investors. Broadly, the reforms are aimed at enhancing efficiency, transparency, and robustness of the security markets, and we have used technology in a big way. Entire marketing infrastructure, securities market infrastructure, we have been bringing in technology and to facilitate things which we earlier couldn't even imagine. All reforms need not be big bang. Many a time, small reforms cumulatively are more effective. Going forward, SEBI will use a right mix to both to achieve the objective. Indian capital market has witnessed a surge in individual and domestic institutional investor participation. Ease of investing through digital platforms have significantly boosted retail investor engagement. You saw one live demonstration by Mr. Vaidyanathan. I think there is enormous work which has been done by the industry in bringing in, these apps which can facilitate so easily making of investments. But then I think it also adds a lot of responsibility on us as well as the market players. Now, increasing participation by domestic institutional investors, including mutual funds and pension funds, has resulted in greater domestic ownership and made Indian markets more resilient. You may have noticed, there has been FPIs because FPIs may react to global events and come in and out. Nevertheless, I think domestic institutional investors have stably filled up the gap in many ways. Not to say that FPIs are not important, and I'll come to a little later of what we need to do with respect of FPI flows. To foster financial inclusion and provide access to security market products and services to wider sections of the society, we are committed to facilitate market innovations and development of new products and processes, low-value mutual fund SIP, small and medium REITs, which we call SM REITs, and specialized investment funds, SIFs, are testimony to the same. As we intend to grow in the speed that we are aspiring, we need to have both domestic and foreign capital to support the growth momentum. With strong economic fundamentals and favorable demographics, India is a bright spot for long-term investments. The country has attracted global investments across equities, debt, and private equity spaces over the years. The presence of such long-term foreign capital would further support infrastructure growth, innovation, and entrepreneurship in India. We at SEBI are conscious about the need to create conducive environment to attract foreign capital. We will be happy to engage with FPI and AIF industry participants to address their difficulties and further rationalize regulations to promote ease of operation. Trust and transparency are the pillars of a healthy capital market. For sustainable capital market growth, maintaining trust and transparency in the financial ecosystem is paramount. A well-regulated market instills confidence among investors, ensuring fair and efficient capital allocation. Regulatory bodies, market participants, and corporates must uphold the highest standards of governance, disclosures, and ethical practices. Enhanced transparency in regulatory action, corporate reporting, and market operations will further strengthen the trust of both domestic and global investors in India's financial markets. And I think the trust and transparency extends to SEBI itself. We need to not only create trust of all stakeholders in us, but we also need to maintain that trust. And to that extent, I think we need to be more transparent, including on various other measures, including, for example, on the conflict of interest of the board and so on. And we will be coming forward with our own plan to further transparently, reveal these conflict of interest, etc., to the public. Ease of doing business in capital market is applicable in all the three touch points: point of entry, point of transacting, and point of exit. Capital market is a dynamic space, so change is imminent, but we will certainly not be looking for maximum regulation. but for optimum regulation. If some statutes are redundant and outdated over the years and not serving any purpose, we are happy to review the same and and change them. We are open to ideas on this. Laws and regulations are better enforced through voluntary compliance. I am looking forward to engage with all stakeholders to discuss what more measures need to be taken to encourage voluntary compliance. I mentioned when I joined 4 T's: trust and transparency, teamwork and technology. And when I say teamwork, teamwork includes the teamwork within SEBI. It also includes teamwork with various participants, investor bodies, the market participants, the market infrastructure institutions. And together we can actually create a further conducive ecosystem. We have come this far. We have to think of next 25 years. We have to think of how 2047 will look like, how we can move together. We have to bring in technology. As I said, technology is always a changing thing. Use the technology to do things better, to more transparent, and give the integrity to the market institution of an order which we should be all proud. But for that, we need teamwork. We need, everyone to come together to do that. So teamwork is more than what is inside. It's also outside. SEBI plus others. Same is true with technology. The market is not a straight path. In order to ensure that investors are not lost in labyrinth, investor awareness and education is very crucial. An informed investor is self-protected. SEBI's effort in the days ahead is to create awareness among both existing and prospective investors. The question is, how do we create awareness? And that is where we need to explore different models of creating awareness across this big country. As said, we may have 400 million PAN-linked Aadhaar accounts. We're still there talking about 135 million of accounts who are trading. We have very slowly we will ramp up to that number, and accordingly we must also plan that how the people are also aware of the risks, how the people are able to do the wealth management in a manner which suits them, how they allocate their own capital portfolio, which also de-risk them when they have to, and take whatever necessary in terms of allocation between the debt and the equity in a manner which suits them. As Charles Dickens said in A Tale of Two Cities, it was the best of the times and it was the worst of the times. There will be difficulties, ups and downs, but India's economic and capital market growth is a strong trajectory backed by policy support, structural reforms, and rising investor participation. With a thriving securities market playing a pivotal role in economic acceleration, India is well positioned to remain a global investment hub and a key driver of the 21st century economy. Thank you for your attention. Jai Hind.
Welcome back to Trading Hour. Well, one stock that continues to build onto its gains is Reliance Industries, now up almost 3.5%, trading near the day's highest points. But as promised, Dheeraj Sachdev, CIO of Roha Ventures, joins us now to discuss market fundamentals and his top sectoral picks. Thank you so much, Dheeraj, for joining us. First up, how are you looking at markets at the current juncture? There's been a significant correction both in terms of price and also valuations have become slightly more attractive. At this point of time, are you incrementally allocating capital to Indian equities?
Yeah, hi, good morning. See, the Indian equity market obviously has been facing volatility and last 2 months of steep correction. And this is largely with the noise of US Trump tariffs or elevated bond yields and strong dollar, which has impacted the FII flows. Now, over the longer term, if such tariffs significantly hurt US economic growth and trade, the dollar could weaken due to US growth and potential capital outflows. So weak US economic activity is actually preventing the dollar from strengthening on the tariff news, and we have been seeing over the last few days. Now, currency being the mother of all trends, any slide in dollar index augurs well for emerging markets in general, as far as flow is concerned.
Dheeraj, apologize for interrupting you mid-sentence, but my colleague Yash is in conversation with SEBI chairperson Tuhin Kanta Pandey. Listen in.
Important to have, of course, the domestic institutions having their ownership in the Indian markets, but foreign investors are also very, very important. Right now, we are going through a period of turbulence. You said that there are various reforms which you will be open to consider for foreign investors also. Give us some little sneak peek into what those reforms could be and what are the ideas that you would look at to make Indian markets more attractive for foreign players.
Well, I've said it and you will see when we unveil it. Thank you.
Oops, tight lip right now. He said what he had to say at his keynote speech, but not sharing a little bit more. But let's get back to our conversation then with Dheeraj Sachdev, CIO at Roha. Dheeraj, please go ahead. You were telling us about how you're viewing the markets right now.
So as you mentioned, if tariffs obviously could pose a risk on the US growth, and US markets can actually also suffer. So it's possible that eventually US markets decline will change or kick such Trump policies into shape as investors understand the damage caused to America from tariffs itself. So coming back to India, obviously domestic consumption trends have been improving and supported by higher retail spending or QSR growth and quick commerce. And the capex cycle is also expected to revive, driven by infra and PLI schemes. Though obviously in the first 9 months of the financial year, it has been slower than expected. Now, there are other macro variables which are also turning positive, like RBI has been cutting interest rates and further aiding further rate cuts going forward as well. So that's again positive part. So the tax cuts or rural demand recovery should aid economic activity and even the corporate earnings over a period of time. Now, more importantly, I think a lot of retail investors have been trapped in small and mid caps. And obviously, there's an obvious question, what needs to be done? The valuations in small and mid caps had been stretched in certain pockets like defense or railways and capital goods. And the recent correction has made many stocks attractive again. But this is a vast universe and stock selection should be bottom up rather than painting all small and mid cap companies with the same brush. So the ongoing market correction is a form of normalized market behavior to cut excesses of fraud that gets created and stretched in an extended bull market. Now, historically, we have also analyzed that several market corrections have taken anywhere between 1 to 6 months to recover. But stocks with strong earnings and reasonable valuations tend to bounce back faster. So while frothy or purely narrative-driven stocks may struggle, companies with reasonable valuations and growth should see renewed investor interest in our view.
Dheeraj, the texture of the market over the last 5 months was sell on any rally. Any small rally that we got was eventually sold into. Now, again, we're in the midst of some sort of a recovery. There has been some selling exhaustion. Do you think we made a durable bottom, or the continuation of the sell on rally trend will extend itself for some more time now, given the uncertainty?
Well, that's quite possible. Generally, when you see a very kind of a panic bottom, any rallies will obviously take out weaker players and they will choose to exit after 10 or 15% of the stock rallies. But there are certain companies, if you're talking about 6,000 to 7,000 universe of companies in the small and mid-cap space, there will always be some companies where the valuations may be 30 or 40 times and they have moved far ahead of time. And even after the correction, they may still be relatively expensive. Well, there are a lot of companies which may have suffered collateral damage, maybe because of the leverage taken out of the system, and their valuations may be far cheaper or relatively attractive compared to many others. So there is a lot of dispersion or disparity as far as the valuation in the small and mid-cap space is concerned. So I think, again, this year is going to be stock pickers market, where the valuations and earnings growth will have disproportionate returns across the portfolios. And we believe large part of the damage has been done. A section of the pocket may be still expensive.
Dheeraj, quick answer, if you may. In terms of commodities, how are you looking at metal and cement stocks? Currently, metals have gained a bit of a bounce. Cement stocks continue to languish. Given the dollar index has cooled off quite significantly, and also raw material prices have eased from on a year-on-year basis for cement, how do you view both of these pockets?
So cement demand so far in FY25 has been muted across segments due to low government spending and raw material cost volatility. I mean, cement prices is seeing some signs of improvement across regions, though it is difficult to say whether these higher prices are likely to sustain because the utilization in the industry is still low at about 68 to 70%. And the capacity utilization is increasing, will increase the supply in FY26 as well. So price hikes undertaken by the companies over the last few months have been absorbed by the market, and demand is anticipated to revive going forward. But despite the price cyclicality, we remain tactically positive on the cement sector, given strong real estate traction and spending on infra and housing. We favor only selective mid-sized cement companies versus large cap due to valuation concerns. Now, on the commodity side, yes, I mean, there are tactical possibility when the dollar weakens, you will see commodity price getting positively impacted. And especially non-ferrous metal companies like zinc and aluminum, we expect they will report better earnings growth compared to steel companies. However, we remain cautious on the metal space due to weak global demand scenario. And besides the risk of trade war between the US and China and slower than expected stimulus-led real estate recovery in China calls for caution in the sector. And also on ferrous, while India has minimal direct steel exports to the US, Chinese dumping remains as a key risk.
Thank you so much, Dheeraj, for joining us and giving us the views on the market. Well, let's now slip into a short break. Up next, we'll discuss market technicals with Mitesh Thakkar and also his top trading bets. Welcome back to Trading Hour. Well, Mitesh Thakkar now joins in for a quick technical check on the market. Thank you so much, Mitesh, for joining us. First up, what are you making of the Nifty and the Bank Nifty at current levels? Do you see further upside?
So, good afternoon. I think I do see further upsides over here, but with some choppiness. It's a counter trend pullback kind of rally. So you'll have bouts of selling like we had one in the morning when the Nifty was down about 60, 70 points, and then the recovery happened. I think we are heading towards 22,750, 800, which is where the gap was there, and which is also the level when we were falling. There were multiple intraday support pivots being made. So I think that's the area where I would, want to exit and take profits and then set aside. But good chance that we will see those levels.
What about stocks, Mitesh? What are you recommending?
I have a buy on DMart with a stop at 35.75 and a target of around 37.20. And Crompton is also a buy here with a stop at about 342 for targets of 360.
In Bank, the stock seems to be falling and underperforming so much more than its peers. 2.5% lower for the day, 4.5% for the week, and from its 52-week high, which is 1570 plus, the stock is still down 40%. So there hasn't been the rebound which we're seeing in the rest of the market in this particular stock.
Sorry, which stock was that? I missed that.
IndusInd Bank.
IndusInd. So one, I think the banks as a pack is underperforming. Two, I think IndusInd, has not been able to give any kind of reversal which the other stocks had given on the hourly to hourly charts, and the Nifty is also trying to give. I think IndusInd Bank has got strong support around this 930, 925 zone. And if it breaks that, then only I'll worry. But otherwise, that's an area where, I would want to see some kind of a reversal pattern developing on the intraday charts and then take a long pitch.
That coincides with its 52-week low. 923 is the 52-week low, and you see support there. Thanks, Mitesh, for joining in. Let's get the conversation surrounding gender parity and how we can close the gender gap. So HSBC presents CNBC TV 18 Future Female Forward, the mega summit co-presented by Cognizant. Here, industry pioneers share their take on what's next. Tune in for interesting discussions that will drive real change. 10th March, 5:30 p.m. onwards.
Welcome back to Trading Hour. Well, let's quickly cut across to Moneycontrol's Global Wealth Summit, where Axis Bank's Chief Economist Neelkanth Mishra and Mahindra Group's Group MD and CEO Anish Shah are in conversation over opportunities and challenges India faces in the road to $10 trillion market capitalization by 2030.
Very low because corporate profitability or the corporate profit share of GDP is low. Then it comes to the multiples. Now, the multiples by definition will be volatile. So you will see them getting affected by cost of capital, what is the risk-free rate, what are the alternatives available, and general euphoria and pessimism. And I think we are coming off of a very high level. We were at a record high. We've never seen those levels. The range that, if you plot 2004 to maybe 2020 or so, was 60 to 80%. We were at 120. So we are now maybe down to about 100%. Can it fall another 10% from here? Perhaps yes. Will that happen because nominal GDP grows and market cap stays the same? I think that's the most likely scenario.
I just wanted to take up one of the themes, and that also leads us into questions on consumption. But again, the last economic survey, and I think the one before that also, has criticized the corporate sector because what it's saying is that the rate of growth in profit, I'll ask Anish to weigh in on this, but first you go. The rate in growth, their profitability has grown quite fast, but they're not paying enough by way of wages. The wage growth is slow. What are your thoughts on that? And is that leading to a weakness in consumption?
I think the observation is right. I'm not sure this can be solved by corporate suddenly becoming more charitable. There has to be a market solution to this. So remember that at this stage of economic growth, most economies tend to see a rise in inequality. So there is a surplus of labor. This is a classic Arthur Lewis growth model, where there is a surplus of or underemployed people in agriculture who want to get employed. By solving some basic problems, we have significantly increased the number of women who want to participate in the labor market. But the number of jobs that we can provide can only grow at 1 or 2%. And therefore, labor doesn't have enough pricing power. Capital is in shortage. That is pretty much the constraint to GDP growth right now. And therefore, capital formation, so the capital share of income keeps going up. And there is another aspect to it, which is that the investment share of GDP, which was at 34% in 2012, had fallen to 27% in 2021. It has since then bounced about 3-4% points. But as the real estate cycle turns, as the power generation cycle turns, I expect it to keep going up. So if GDP grows at 7, consumption will only grow at 4.5. This is arithmetic because most of the activity is happening on the investment side. And within that, the top 15%, 20% may grow at 8-10%, but the bottom 70-80% may grow at 3%. Now that is the outcome you should expect if there is no intervention. How is it that we were able to bring down consumption inequality between 2012 and 22? It was by significantly investing in productivity boosting things like providing people electricity, providing people cooking gas, toilets, pakka houses. And maybe now we need to take it one step further and provide them cheaper capital. And so there are tools to reduce this, the pace at which inequality worsens. But I think we should gear ourselves up and maybe expect some further increase in inequality.
Anish, your views? Are companies being too stingy in giving out wage increases to their employees?
In a capitalist society, I think each company would do what it feels makes sense overall. From our perspective, we have been more than fair with everyone. In fact, we've seen a significant amount of growth as well. And most importantly for us, we are very clear that our biggest asset is our people. And therefore, that's one that we always put first. And while the averages may suggest something different, I think I would just say that in a capitalist society, sometimes you've got to go through some of the cycles and things work out better after that.
There's been a lot of debate recently about the work week, about 90-hour work weeks or 80-hour work weeks. What are your views on that?
So I've had a very clear view on this, which is each person must set the right balance for themselves. Over my career, the balance I've set is weekends will always be with family. And that's one thing I look back and I'm very happy about, because the years I've spent with my sons growing up is something I wouldn't have wanted to give up. And during the weekdays, I'd work what was required. I've never counted the hours, but I would always spend weekends with family. But that's my balance. Right? I think each person should set their own balance and should do what is right for them at that point in time. So there should not be a definition around number of hours. It's more about the output, the quality of the output. It's about the balance that each person wants. And organizations must support that. And that's what we need a friendly culture, a friendly organization to do, is to be able to say that we recognize the balance each person wants. There are times when there are needs of individuals that require even further balance. And that's what an organization should be able to support at a time of need for each of their associates. That's one thing at the Mahindra Group we are driving in a significant way in an overall initiative that has been there as part of our culture for years, which is around We Care. A specific maternity program that we have is a 5-year maternity program in terms of significant, not just benefits, but in terms of how we provide the time that each person needs when they go through maternity. And not just that, but across many different things. So for me, it's more around, can an organization support the needs of each person, and can each person ensure that they have the right balance that is appropriate for them?
So the question is for both of you. So, obviously economic growth since COVID has largely been driven by government capex. And I think in the communication after the budget, the finance minister and including the former finance secretary, now the SEBI chief, they've all said that the government capex obviously can't keep growing at 20% plus indefinitely. So the private sector needs to step up. When will that happen? Anish, why don't you go first, and then I'll come to Neelkant.
Well, Bodhi, first I would give a lot of credit to the government for staying consistent on capex, because the multiplier effect is far greater. Having various SOPs can increase demand in the short run, but that's not the right approach for the economy, so I would give a lot of credit there. From a private sector standpoint, again, back in a capitalist society, it is going to depend on capacity utilization. Our auto business has almost quadrupled capacity now in the last 4 years, because we've seen that level of demand. The industry overall has not grown at that rate. Many other industries are starting to get to 75-80% capacity utilization. That's when we're going to see greater capacity come in. So I feel that private sector capex will follow. Overall, we are very optimistic on the Indian economy. And it is just a matter of time that will happen, but that is part of driving greater demand, and which will then result in higher capacity utilization and therefore private sector capex.
Neelkant?
Yeah, so I think we have to view the problem a bit differently. We are getting caught into that classic psychological trap that something that you see very often you think is very important. Just to give you perspective, if India's investment to GDP ratio is 32%, central government capex as a percentage of GDP is 3.2%. So it's only 1/10 of the total capex that we are doing currently. So to ascribe all of investment in India to just what the government is going to do in the next 3 months is, I think, being very myopic. So I would break this down into 2 parts. The first is, why did the investment to GDP ratio fall in the first place? So of the 7% fall from 34 to 27 between 2012 and 21, 5% point was because of a drop in household investments in dwellings. It was the real estate cycle. Just because it is not something that can be managed at a central level does not mean that it's not important. The real estate cycle is an absolutely integral part of business cycles in most large economies, and so it is here. The recovery that we have seen post-COVID has actually been boosted by a significant pickup in real estate capex. The second part is the corporate investments in power generation and on items or goods that feed into real estate construction are the 2 elements that slowed down the most, because the real estate cycle was down, the power generation, we had overcapacity. Now we need to invest again. In the next 7-8 years, we'll need to add a lot of power capacity. And you see that the companies that feed into the real estate construction cycle, like metal, cement, they're doing a lot of capex. You see that most metal companies today are back to 3.5 times debt EBITDA. So they are aggressively investing. You see last year we imported 10% of our steel. The second aspect is that when we think about India's manufacturing share of GDP, we tend to forget that there is a lot of internal demand that we need to focus on. And I'll just take 30 seconds to explain that as we move from, say, a $4 trillion GDP to, say, a $20 trillion GDP at some time in the future, of the 16 trillion of extra GDP, not more than 1 trillion is going to come from the change in net exports. 15 trillion will be domestic demand. This is true even for China. And therefore, we have to be focused on things that consume goods. And the biggest consumer of goods is real estate. Because this is the biggest investment a household makes through its lifetime. And therefore, I think as we think about the capex cycle picking up, we have to be focused on how quickly is real estate construction reviving. The cycle is doing